Hi, my name is Adam Cox. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and phobia expert. I'm founder of phobiaguru.com, a company that specializes in eliminating phobias rapidly. Today we're going to be talking about tokophobia. Now, tokophobia is the pathological, very high intensity fear of giving birth, childbirth, or the idea of being pregnant. And the reason that this is such a significant fear is that it can lead to trauma at a point where women can be very vulnerable anyway. So if someone has this fear, they will obsess about contraception. They will obsess about pregnancy tests. They will go to extreme lengths to avoid being pregnant and to check if they are pregnant. So this is a very, very serious phobia in the sense that it creates high levels of anxiety, particularly at the point where people are being intimate or the aftermath where there is the worry, the concern of being pregnant. This fear normally is created in childhood, either from a parent or sibling that has this particular fear, so it could be a learned behavior, but equally it can be based on seeing things or hearing about things as a child. Now, children are obviously quite curious. This obviously affects women, females. Quite often they might hear stories of a family member, or they might see an educational video about pregnancy, or see even a video of a birth taking place. And that can be quite traumatic because they're just getting their head around the idea at this age that women can become pregnant, they can be mothers, and then it dawns on them that they could have a child inside them. And it's not the practice itself, because obviously as a species we wouldn't exist if women, if all women were frightened of childbirth. There is a healthy respect and a rational fear linked to childbirth, because of course there can be health complications or medical situations around being pregnant, giving birth. What we're talking about here is the anxiety response at the thought of being pregnant or the thought of giving birth. And the reason it's so impactful is that for the 6 to 7% of women that may have this fear, and that's an estimate, they can go to extreme lengths to avoid being pregnant, even if they are in a relationship where as a couple they want children. They may still put off something that could lead to childbirth. So it can literally change lives by having this fear, particularly if you have this fear and then you don't have this fear anymore. For a lot of people that have this fear, they tend to consider other options if they do want children, such as adoption or surrogacy, rather than acknowledging the possibility of removing this fear entirely. There is a belief with a lot of people that have tokophobia that this is simply their approach, their decision, or their feelings about pregnancy, and that won't change. There is a concept of permanence attached to the idea of being afraid of being pregnant or afraid of giving birth. So one of the key triggers for people with this, if they're not pregnant, will be media coverage of high-profile pregnancies, for example. So within the UK, if there's a royal baby on the way, that tends to get a lot of media coverage. You tend to have lots of images in the media of women pregnant with bumps and things like that. And that can itself be a trigger for those people that have tokophobia. It's not something that they kind of like watching, because they associate an empathetic feeling of what if they were pregnant, and that's an undesirable thing for them. The way in which this phobia is changed really is to get deep into the thoughts that link to the emotion. So for most people with tokophobia, most women with tokophobia, they will have a particular way of thinking about pregnancy and a way of thinking about childbirth that makes it feel traumatic or scary or creates anxiety for them. My role as a phobia specialist is to figure out the exact sequence of thoughts that create that outcome, that emotional outcome of anxiety, and then to work with them so that they can think about being pregnant without that feeling being there. And that feeling of ambivalence, it's not that they have to feel great about being pregnant, but just the absence of anxiety suddenly creates the possibility that for them, they no longer would worry if they were pregnant. And that's the key thing. The belief system with people that have tocophobia is that if the idea of being pregnant is this traumatic, what would it be like to actually be pregnant? And there is an overwhelming feeling of that would be unbearable, that would be impossible to cope with, hence the avoidance action. So it's about changing the thought processes, and normally I can do that in around about 1 or 2 sessions. It doesn't take very long if, like me, you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of phobics, and you can have a quick Google of my name, Adam Cox, Phobia Expert, and you'll see lots of case studies and examples of me working with people with very complicated phobias rapidly, and those phobias don't come back. I also have created a 60-minute explanation video on how phobias are created and how they can be eliminated rapidly. I'll have a link to that video in the YouTube notes here, so you can have a look at that. But essentially, phobias don't need to be permanent. You can have a phobia and then not have that phobia, and that can happen quite rapidly. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you know someone with tokophobia, please forward this video to them. Or if you have any questions about tokophobia, please put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer every single one of them. Hope this has been useful. Thank you very much.